We interact with animals, with nature pretty much every day, right? Our pets, maybe birds outside, even just the plants we have. But,
Hmm.
how often do we really stop and think about the deeper side of it, the philosophical, maybe even spiritual side of their existence? What if? What if every single living thing, from the tiniest insect to a huge elephant, is actually part of one single intelligent cosmic plan?
Mm.
Okay, so this idea that everything might be connected in some larger design, it's not entirely new, is it? Some traditions have explored this for ages. What are we digging into today specifically?
Well, what we want to do for you today is explore this really intriguing subject. Because even though, yeah, some ancient traditions thought about this for centuries, it's only kind of recently come into sharper focus here in the West.
Hmm.
We're talking about the real place of animal life within what these sources call the universal plan. And the material we've looked at, it offers a really unique perspective. It challenges a lot of common Western ideas, and it brings out some ancient Eastern wisdom about how everything's connected. The goal, really, is to give you a bit of a shortcut to understanding these surprisingly deep insights.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how different cultures see animals. If you look back historically in the West, even way back, like ancient Egypt, Chaldea, Babylonia, Greece, Rome, the approach was often, well, pretty different from what we might think now. You hear about hunting being a sport, right, for the elite.
Mhm.
Animals were often seen as something that, well, really doesn't count. They had no defense against the inroads of human cunning and skill, as
Yeah.
one source puts it. It was almost like a game.
Yeah, that viewpoint. It has definitely started changing more recently. You see it in the last few years, particularly with like films and TV. They've really brought ecological issues into sharp focus. And that's given us, I think, a deeper, more sympathetic understanding of animal life and its problems. That awareness is definitely on the rise in the West.
But here's something that caught my eye, this sort of paradox. Despite this growing awareness, Western culture, especially America, is pointed out as probably the biggest meat eater in the world. And the sources kind of challenge us here. They suggest that eating too much meat isn't just about physical health.
Right.
It might have a certain effect upon psychology,
Yeah.
making people potentially less sensitive, less considerate, less integrated. It's a strong point. And, it's interesting, even way back in the West, you had exceptions like Pythagoras pushing for strict vegetarianism.
Right, exactly. Now, if we shift over to the East, the understanding of animal life there, it's been explored much, much more deeply, particularly in Hinduism and Buddhism, more than in most Western philosophies or religions. These Eastern faiths, they've consistently included animals right in their concept of the universal plan.
Yeah.
It's just a fundamental difference in how they see the world.
And there are some amazing historical examples from Japan that really bring this to life. Think about this. Back in the 7th century, a Japanese emperor actually made a law against killing animals for any reason.
Wow.
And to make it stick, he subsidized people whose jobs involved hunting or fishing, basically paid them not to kill.
That's incredible state support for animal welfare way back then.
Isn't it? And then, much later, when the first American consul general showed up in Japan and asked for a beefsteak, it apparently caused an international crisis.
Seriously.
Yeah. Farmers literally hid their cattle. Nobody wanted to sacrifice what they called their four-footed brethren.
Ah.
They eventually found a cow, but get this. Afterwards, they actually put up a monument in the memory of the cow.
A monument to the cow.
Yep. And even now, apparently, some Japanese farmers, when an old work ox dies, they build a little monument to its memory on the farm. They leave offerings, food, incense. It shows such a deep reverence.
And what's really fascinating there is that core Oriental idea. All living things form one family. An animal is often called his little brother. And humans, they're seen as the god of the kingdoms below his own.
So like stewards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this view, it goes even further. It includes plants, even minerals. They're all seen as alive, each with its own consciousness, its own role.
That really leads us into this central idea, this profound concept, that there's just one life energizing everything in nature. It's not like humans have some special spark nobody else does. This single light force, it's shared. It's distributed through the great and the small, through the complicated and the simple. We don't have a monopoly on it.
Yeah, and if you connect that to the bigger picture, it really clarifies this idea that everything that lives is a mechanical masterpiece. I mean, just think about the incredible complexity. The source mentions the many lenses of the eye of one house fly. It's astounding.
Right.
Or even minerals, which we might think of as dead. They're described as chemical masterpieces with these intricate structures, their own inherent vitality. There's this almost blunt Eastern saying, there is nothing dead in the world except a stupid human being.
Yeah.
Everything else is teeming with life, part of this huge intelligence.
Which highlights a limitation, maybe, of the typical Western scientific method. Science is great at cataloging things, right?
Analyzing
Structures, functions.
Absolutely. It tells us the what and the how.
But it cannot explain, as the source says, how life creates things or why creatures even exist. It doesn't know anything about the life in them. So if science hits a wall there, what do these Eastern philosophies say about that fundamental mystery? Where does life come from? Why?
And that leads directly to the Oriental conclusion. This eternal life everywhere. It's seen as definitely an attribute of God. So the life in anything is the God in that thing.
Okay.
And this life force, it's not just energy, it's intelligent. It's not a blind force. It can repair itself, restore, grow, complicate, even perpetuate its own forms. Think about like a single ray of sunlight. It can support this incredible array, an infinite series of manifestations. It maintains a complex human body, or in a field, it fosters maybe 100 forms of plants, flowers, trees, and shrubs.
All drawing from that one source.
Exactly. Each taking what it needs, all sustained by this single intelligent force.
Wow. Okay, so that puts a completely different spin on human responsibility, doesn't it? If it's all one life, then the sources suggest that a superior form is responsible for that, which is less evolved than itself. So humans, with our particular kind of mind, we're not just living here. We're like a gardener in the garden of the Lord.
Yeah, caretakers.
Yes.
Responsible for all the other life forms in that garden.
That's a heavy responsibility.
It is. And it also changes how we should think about death. From this Eastern viewpoint, death is merely the transference of life from an objective to a subjective existence.
So life doesn't end.
Humans can't destroy life itself, according to this view. We can only remove it from a specific form, like breaking a container. The essence, the vitality, it continues.
So applying that, maybe the whole food chain idea, the predator-prey thing, maybe it may not be quite as serious as we think, because it's only the vehicle, the body, that gets obliterated or removed.
Exactly. The indestructible vitality remains. East Indian philosophers, for instance, have always assumed that animals, like everything else, have an immortality. Their life essence continues beyond the physical.
Okay, this idea of indestructible life, it leads somewhere really interesting, doesn't it? Into how Eastern thought actually categorizes life. There's this Brahminical cosmic theology, sounds complex, but it's fascinating. It talks about 4 distinct waves of life, or kingdoms. You've got mineral, plant, animal, and human.
Right. And importantly, this is quite different from, say, Darwinian evolution.
How so? Well, it's not seen as a straight line where minerals become plants, plants become animals, animals become humans. Instead, each kingdom is viewed as its own separate, complete thing, a unity within a greater unity.
Okay, separate but connected kingdoms. And within those?
Within each kingdom, they talk about archetypes or group spirits. You can think of it like a universal template or a collective soul for an entire species or kingdom.
Like an elephantness.
Kind of, yeah. A guiding consciousness that oversees all the individual elephants. It's the total guardianship, the overshadowing totality for that kind of being. And within that archetype, all the individual forms exist.
That's a wild idea. And these kingdoms, they interact with that universal life force differently.
Yes, they have different orders of energy implementation, basically how they process and express that life energy. Minerals, it's sort of diffused. Plants, it's vertical energy flowing up from the earth.
Makes sense. Roots to leaves, right? Animals, it's more horizontal think movement, interacting with the environment. And humans, it's seen as vertical again, but from the top down, suggesting a connection to higher consciousness pouring in.
Different ways of plugging into the same source.
Precisely. Each designed perfectly for its role.
Okay, let's dive into the animal kingdom a bit more. That seems like where we see some really striking examples of this intelligence.
Definitely. The animal kingdom is described as gradually unfolding what might be termed the emotional content of life. But beyond emotion, their intelligence and specialized abilities are incredible. Take the elephant, just amazing memory, we know that, but also a peculiar ability to estimate human behavior. And apparently they're considered the only animals with a sense of humor.
A sense of humor, really?
Yeah. The source tells us this great story about an elephant in India. There was a lady visiting with this, elaborate, flowery hat. The elephant apparently eyed it, then slowly, sneakily reached back with its trunk.
No.
Plucked the hat right off her head, and then started swinging it around, making these triumphant grunting noises like he was laughing at its own practical joke.
That's hilarious. And kind of amazing.
Isn't it? And they're also thought to have a kind of religion or wisdom. You see it if you watch elephants working, like stacking teak logs in Burma. They are incredibly precise. They'll stack them, then step back, look it over,
Yeah.
nudge any logs that aren't quite right. Real precision.
Wow.
Then you have dolphins, right?
Yeah.
Revered by the ancient Greeks, even an early symbol in Christianity for their intelligence.
Sure.
And think of other specializations. Birds migrating thousands of miles, they're given the equipment for that navigation. Bats with their built-in sonar. There was this experiment where they stretched fine wires across a cave mouth. Hundreds of thousands of bats flew out. Not a single one hit a wire. Their sonar is that good. And the key point here is, these specializations aren't seen as steps towards becoming human, like in a simple evolutionary ladder. They're necessary for the animal's own survival, for fulfilling its purpose within its own kingdom.
That elephant story, the humor, the precision with the logs, it really does paint a picture of a mind at work, maybe in ways we don't fully grasp. Is that something these texts explore much? Like the inner world of animals, and if animals have their own complete kingdoms and purposes, what does that mean for us, for the human kingdom? How did we come about in this view?
Well, the human kingdom is considered a great wave in itself. Humans were created human, full stop. Even if maybe the earliest physical forms appeared or resembled very closely the lower kingdoms. Medical scholars apparently studied embryology and saw how the human embryo seemed to echo those earlier forms in the womb, which they took as supporting evidence.
So not evolving from animals, but maybe mirroring those forms early on.
Something like that. And the transitions between these great kingdoms, like, say, consciousness, moving from a mineral state to a plant state that's thought to happen in these vast cosmic time cycles. Specifically, during the intervals between the days of manifestation, what they call the days and nights of Brahma. Think of it like the universe breathing in and out over immense eons.
Okay, huge cosmic scales here.
Massive scales. So if an animal consciousness were ever to achieve a human state, it wouldn't happen here in our physical world.
Yeah.
It would happen on a different plane, like the etheric plane, a subtler dimension. It's a much grander cyclical picture of evolution than just linear progression.
Okay, bringing it back down to earth a bit.
Right.
What does all this mean for how we should actually live alongside animals now?
Right.
One key difference the sources point out is the animal's lack of memory, not in the sense of forgetting everything, but maybe not having that continuous narrative sense of self we do, and not being able to organize a continuity of existence. This apparently means the animal does not have the complete individuality that the human being has. How does that affect its experience?
Well, the idea is that the animal exists more in a kind of trance state. It experiences life largely as we would in a dream or in a vision. Less defined, perhaps. So when an animal dies, it dies back into its own race, kingdom, or kind. It merges back into that group spirit or archetype we talked about.
Back to the elephantness.
Exactly. Rather than being separated forever as an individual soul in the human sense. Because its underlying archetypal pattern is not changed. And this is partly why the food chain, from this perspective, isn't seen as quite so brutal or tragic. The individual form dissolves, but the greater life of its kind carries on. The essence returns to the whole.
Okay, so if that's the animal state, what's our duty as humans?
The message seems to be, we should be thoughtful and kind and attentive to their needs. Basic compassion.
There's a but, isn't there?
There is. The sources also warn against over-sheltering them or messing too much with their normal processes and natural laws. Trying to overly humanize them or shield them from all natural difficulty can actually cause problems.
We're finding balance.
Exactly. Though it's noted that we have made positive changes, like automobiles thankfully reduce a lot of the old brutality towards horses, and veterinary care has improved immensely. That shows growing empathy, which is good.
So it circles back to that core idea of the one life.
Absolutely. Any act against life is therefore an act against God, because there's this one immutable divine force sustaining everything. So all destructiveness, therefore, is an abuse of one life.
And there's a difference in responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
The animal, it's governed by immutable laws, instinct, its nature. It doesn't operate on a human moral compass of vices and virtues. But humans, we have the right of choice. And that makes us uniquely responsible for his own actions.
Which means, wow, this concept really hits home on a personal level. Like every word that we say is made possible by that one life. Therefore, if we say that which is not true, we are abusing that life. Whoa.
Yeah, and every mood that we have is that life, and therefore if the mood is unpleasant or unkind, we are misusing energy.
It makes you accountable for literally every thought, word, feeling, action. It's all tapping into that same sacred energy source.
Exactly. We're described as being God to the cells in our own body, responsible for our own inner world. And also as teachers and parents, not just for our human kids, but for the animal and plant kingdoms too, which leads to a strong stance against things like killing for fun or sport, or even experimentation like vivisection. Because these actions coarsen human nature, they damage our own sensitivity to that one life.
And taking that even broader, war is a supreme misuse of energy, a massive, tragic abuse of life.
Definitely.
And this all ties into karma, right? Effect following cause. Good karma is the right use of this incredible divine potential we're all partaking in. It's about conscious choice.
So wrapping it up, if we really recognize this one tremendous life energy that, ensouls the universe, it means we're always constantly participating in a kind of holy communion. It's this profound, maybe intangible mystery, but it's the very thing that makes all definable things possible. This single intelligent life is the bedrock of reality.
So here's a final thought for you, something to maybe chew on. Think about resources. If we waste gasoline, eventually we run short, right? Pretty simple. What if the same applies to this universal life within us? What if, as the source suggests, if we waste this life in ourselves, we damage the channels in our own nature by which this life can reach us? It really pushes you to reflect on how every single thing you do, every action, every thought, every word impacts this one sacred life force that flows through everything. Our job, maybe our purpose then, is to try and reduce suffering and sustain life and use properly the divine resources. Just ponder that for a bit. What changes if you truly start to see the divine, not just in yourself or other people, but in every living thing, from the dirt under your feet to the stars way up there? What changes then?